I'd like to call to order the April 25th meeting of the Clive City Council. Would the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Council members Klein.
Here.
McCoy.
Here.
Judkins. Here. Weaver.
Here.
McElhenney.
Here.
You all would rise and join us with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have our agenda. I know of no changes.
Move approval. Second.
Motion is second to approve the agenda. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. Next, we want to recognize our municipal clerks by declaring the week of May 5 to 11 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week. So let me read the proclamation that we have. Whereas the office of Professional Municipal Clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of Professional Municipal Clerk is among the oldest public servants, whereas the office provides the professional link between the citizens, government, and other levels, and whereas clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. Whereas the clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community, whereas clerks continually strive to improve the administration of their offices through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, annual meetings. Whereas it's most appropriate, we recognize the accomplishments of our clerks. Therefore, I recognize the week of May 5 through 11 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend our appreciation to our clerks, Matthew Graham and Paula Vinema. Thank you all for your service, and we appreciate it. So congratulations.
Anything in that requires a haircut for our city clerk? Just checking.
Aw.
To the 5th. We
Nothing I can see in the documentation. Thank you for the
can add that
question.
for next year.
All right, next up, we have our citizen presentation. This is the opportunity for anyone to approach the council on an item that is not on the agenda. Do we have anyone online who wishes to do that? And while Pete checks on that, just reminding everyone that we follow the pillars of character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. We expect everyone in the chamber to follow those principles. No one. We'll move on to our presentation, and we're excited to learn more about the new airport update. Kevin.
Mayor Edwards and the City Council, Kevin Foley, Des Moines International Airport. Thank you, first of all, for giving me a few minutes. I'm here tonight to give you a brief update on the terminal, but mostly to say thank you. So on the terminal, I know your city manager has shared with you a link to a fly-through of the terminal. That is basically the 100% design. We do have 100% design. That fly-through was done at 90%, but not much has changed. And we will take 100% design to the board May 14th and ask for their approval. Of course, they've seen everything as we go along anyway. Construction is underway, fully underway. It's mostly dirt work still today, but starting on, I think May 1st is the schedule for foundations to start going in ground for the terminal itself. The board just accepted the 5th bid package. We're doing this project, construction management at risk. It has gone very, very well thus far. I don't know how else we would have done this project were it not for the CMAR process. And I would offer that our RFQs or our RFPs that selected our owners' representatives, our architects, and the construction management team, if you would want those to be shared, I'd offer that at any time. On funding, you may recall that Polk County passed by 80% a referendum to lend, to bond on behalf of the airport and lend those dollars to the airport. That passed by 80%. The bond bid is going May 8th is the bid process. And on June 4th, we should have those funds. So we are fully funded for the first phase and moving forward. And before I continue, I would answer any questions. I know that's brief, but I would answer any questions that anyone would have about the project.
Any questions? Ted?
Can you just give us, Kevin, a reminder of the general timeline, like when each phase is expected to be completed, et cetera?
So phase one is completed late in 2026 with fully operational and moved in very early in 2027. We're on schedule right now and anticipate that we will stay there. Phase two is under design right now. We have 30% design for phase two. It actually adds 3 more gates. It appears that there will be some funding available, at least on the federal side. It won't fund completely phase two, but I think there's going to be too much funding there for us to walk away from it. So I anticipate we'll keep right on going on into phase two, and we will build as many additional gates as we possibly can. I think the fly-through just went by. There'll be 6 gates in phase one with all of the passenger screening, bag screening, inbound bag system, the ticket counters, all those areas that we currently experience the most pinch points today. That's what's in phase one, the structure and the system. So everything's up-gauged. Systems are enlarged to handle the crowds that we have today and on into the future.
And do you expect to have to come back to the cities for more funding?
I do not. The anticipation is that we will either, there's potentially some additional funding still available with the state from the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, but the rest of it will be our own dollars and/or federal dollars.
Kevin, can you talk about the increased capacity that the redesigned airport and how many gates it will have compared with how many we have now?
When we launch with phase one, assuming we don't go into phase two, but just what I know is funded right now, phase one, as I said, we'll have 6 gates on it, but we'll have a short bridge then to the existing concourses, which will give us a total of 18 gates to function when we open. When we're completely done with all 3 phases of this new terminal, there'll be 22 gates with room to expand, but initially there'll be 22 gates as compared to what we're doing today, which we have 12 gates today. And it's not only the passenger that suffers there. What we're short on today is places to park airplanes. And if we can't park additional airplanes, we can't increase the capacity, and hence we can't increase the competition and keep ticket prices low. So that's the main concern. Passengers will take care of themselves. They'll sit on the floor if they have to. We don't want to treat them that way, don't get me wrong, but they will, and they'll find a plug-in. We are terribly short of restrooms, especially women's restrooms. But again, passengers will take care of themselves. We just have to be able to park the airplanes.
Other questions?
I really have enjoyed this process, watching this process, and to see this final package of that fly through. It's pretty incredible for Des Moines, and well done putting that whole package together. I know it wasn't easy.
Well, as my predecessor used to tell me, not frequently, but occasionally, Kevin, if this was easy, everybody'd be doing it. So, so with that, I sincerely want to say thank you. Without the community, this has truly been a community project. And without all of the communities and all of the governmental entities' efforts, both their support, political, even if it was just moral support, and in many cases, the financial support, we couldn't have gotten this far even yet. So I'm here to say thank you. Mayor Edwards, I do have a plaque. It's a Des Moines International Airport Terminal Project Champion. On behalf of the airport, again, just to say thank you.
Thank you, Pete. We'll get a, where do you want us, Pete?
Go ahead.
Mayor gets all
You
that
do the
glory.
whole council too.
Yeah, I'm for that.
Council. you vote.
Council like to be in the picture? Come on down. We'll do it
I
right
like
over
the
here.
mayor getting all the glory.
Mayor, Kevin, we'll do it over here. There's a little more space over here. Folks, you want to come down?
Puffy jacket on.
You're welcome. I mean, we voted for it. You voted for it.
You might like dress up for it. Yeah. Sure, I can find some AI to help you on that. All right, we'll do it for you. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Somebody's cut out.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin. You bet. Thanks, guys.
I always remind myself.
Next up, we have our Lions. Brad, I think we have something we want to get from you.
You bet, you bet. Can I ask all of our members to come up with me, please?
Jake had one too.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, the Clive Lions is just a huge proponent of what you're doing with the Greenbelt Landing Project. So we've been raising money as we can with our small group, but we have a check for $5,000 to be used for the Clive Greenbelt Landing Project. And so we appreciate everything that you do. We'd like to present this. We already passed a check off, but this is, we'd love to have a picture so we can. continue.
Well, I bet Pete wants us over
And
there.
I kind of saw that.
Richard didn't tell us about the 5,000 real dollar check.
That's right. I'm leaving.
Made out to Richard Brown. Richard's Aruba Fund. Yeah.
They got plaques. But permit, that's.
Thank you, Pete. So we don't get to keep this.
You can sure have it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. For the
Denny, you're
record,
good.
Denny asked this to be at the beginning of the meeting, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Denny, you're staying for the whole meeting, right?
He wouldn't give me my old chair back.
Yeah, right.
Take care.
All right, with that, we'll move to consent.
Second.
Motion is second on consent. Further discussion, seeing none. Would the council please vote?
I'm ready.
And will clerk please post that vote? And if you can't vote, provide oral indication to.
Yeah, I know, right? I hit the button.
That passes 5-0. Liz.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This action will approve our intent to set the date for May 2nd for the sale of our 2024 GO bonds, which will then, of course, provide the means to be able to do our projects in FY25 in the capital improvement plan. This action will also authorize you to use the preliminary official statement, which was in your packet. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those now.
Any questions for Liz? Otherwise, we're just setting the date.
I would add that Moody's did affirm our AA1 rating. We just received that
Oh, good.
a couple days ago, and I'll share the report with you all
Press release tomorrow.
to see kind of the details of that.
I'll move a resolution setting the date for May 2nd, 2024.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion. Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? The suspense is just killing me.
The cliffhanger.
Just say,
Refreshing, but yes, yes.
and that passes 5-0. Liz, what about utility rates?
This is the second consideration for ordinances adjusting the utility rates, which we proposed and approved in the budget process, which we approve in the budget process. So we incorporated the 3% increase for water, 2% for sewer, and then also 8% for stormwater. And then we talked last meeting about increasing the ERU to 4,100 from 3,200, which will affect our commercial properties. We have not received any public comment as of today. And I believe communications will be going out in May, so.
Yeah, in late April, early May, this will be to all the commercial and industrial stormwater ratepayers. These are the folks who are going to see a little different math because the ERU calculation is going up, which means that the divisor for them is working in their favor to yield a lower bill. So good information for us to be sharing with those customers.
I'd move that ordinance number 1142 pertaining to water rates, having been considered by the council, be voted on for passage prior to its final adoption.
Second.
The motion is second for the second reading for 1142. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move that ordinance number 1143, having been considered by the council, be voted on for passage prior to its final adoption.
Second.
Motion is second for a second consideration of 1143. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move that ordinance number 1144 pertaining to stormwater, having been considered by the council, be voted on for passage prior to its final adoption.
Second.
Motion is second on 1144. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote?
Great.
And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Liz. Matthew.
Hello, good evening. Before you this evening is ordinance 1145. This is your second consideration. This is our recodification ordinance. There has been no input from the public, no concerns from staff. My recommendation would be that you actually waive the requirement for 3 readings and go straight to adoption.
I'd move that the rule requiring that an ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to this meeting be suspended with respect to ordinance number 1145.
Second.
Motion and a second to suspend the rules. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? And we've suspended the rules by a vote of 5-0.
Move that ordinance number 1145 be considered, placed upon its passage, and adopted.
Second.
Motion is second for the final reading of 1145. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you.
Purchasing.
Yep, now we're moving on to the not so easy one, but not too bad. The purchasing policy that we had here in place was in place when I started working here about 17 years ago. And during that time, we noticed there was a lot of inconsistencies of application of that policy, a little bit of confusion on how we use it. So it was time for a major overhaul. I would like to thank Doug for your input on this project. Jeff, thank you, Liz. A lot of people had a lot of input on this, and we worked on this over the course of several weeks and months. And finally got to a point where we got this before you this evening. And there were a lot of things that we addressed. One of the primary things that we aimed for and we did succeed at, I think, addressing is we have our accounts payable software, our purchasing software, and we have a purchasing policy. That policy didn't really translate over to our software. We have workflows built into that software that we can utilize for processing requests for payments. So what we wanted to do was create a policy that would marry with that software in an intelligent way. So if you pass this policy this evening, what we'll be able to do is build those thresholds, those purchasing thresholds into our purchasing software. And things will become more streamlined, automated, and we won't have things that, slip between the cracks. Everything will just flow smoother for us. So that was one thing that we addressed that I think will be very impactful. On your side, things that will change as far as what's on the agenda, we did address some kind of cleanup things. One of those being professional services agreements. Presently, you guys will vote to create those contracts, and then you will see pay apps on the consent list. Those will be going away. The reason being is because you have already approved that money to be spended, and revisiting that over and over and over again throughout the 20, 30, 40, 50 payments we make on a contract is really not necessary. What you will see though is if there's any changes. So if a change order is made to any of those contracts, that would be brought before you. So you'd then be revisiting at that time.
Matthew, a threshold on the change orders or any change order?
Any change order, because once a contract is in place, we can't administratively change it except for
One
with
exception.
his exception. And we only typically will utilize his exception in an emergency case.
And I'm not suggesting we see all the change orders. I'm actually kind of saying there should be a threshold.
I have up to 25,000.
Yes.
Per either emergency payment or change order that I can authorize under the code.
I guess it's just consent, right? So it's not, we're not having to.
Correct. And
Correct.
typically, you're never going to see more than
Okay.
two or three.
And I think
change
too, one thing
orders
to
on
point out with the
I
pay
don't want it to hold up.
requests,
Mhm.
the pay requests, they'll still be on the bill list
Correct.
that you all sign off on. It just won't show as a separate enumerated pay request on the consent agenda. So it cleans that up a little bit. And then there's also the, well, I won't jump ahead because I know
Oh.
Matthew's going to get to this.
The purchasing thresholds have changed. The purchasing thresholds previously were actually really kind of incoherent. So we've kind of locked those down, and we intentionally made those thresholds kind of mirror what the state says with regard to capital improvement projects for vertical and horizontal infrastructure. So that you'll see a number in there at 36,000 where you guys would have to actually vote on those expenditures. And that's because we're mirroring what the state requires for capital improvement projects. But the way it is written in there right now, it would be any purchase from 0 to 10,000 would require somebody to input that payment into our purchasing software, and then it would be filtered to the department head for the department head's approval. And then it would appear on your bill list. So that's that first threshold. That's what we're considering kind of a minor purchase. In today's world, $0 to $10,000 is not out of the ordinary expense. Then we jump up above 10,000 to 36,000 would require a little bit more approval. So the payment would be input, it would go to the department head for approval, and then it would be funneled to Liz, who would then be able to verify that the purchase has been budgeted for, that there are funds available for it. So that's another layer of approval, and then it would go on your bill list. Purchases over 36,000 would then need your direct consent to purchase, whether that's construction of a bridge or if it's purchasing of a dump truck, a vehicle. Any of those purchases over 36,000 would require your vote. That could be a consent vote, but it would require your action.
What is it today, Matthew? Is it?
Good question. It's not, it's actually not really clear.
That's the new.
Yes. Typically what you've been seeing is pay requests for any capital infrastructure has been on consent. Pay requests on any contract has basically been on consent. And then you've seen approvals to purchase. And those approvals to purchase, that threshold has been kind of mushy, but it's basically over 10,000, I think is where it was at. But it has not been applied equally across the board. So that's why we're saying we're going to build this into our software there. That way there's no questioning where this goes.
Yeah, and I think it's good to have a number because otherwise you get all those different things in there and it can become white noise, right? So like,
Exactly.
you just miss it.
Mhm.
How did you come up with the 36,000 number? Is that state, you said,
So-
guidelines or?
When you're building vertical and horizontal infrastructure, there's thresholds that you go through where you're required to do competitive bidding. And that's really one of the lower thresholds that they have in there. So we just decided anything over 36,000, we're going to kind of treat in that same regard. That way we don't, you can go overboard with it and that's okay. You can competitively bid a project even if you don't need to, and that's okay. But if it's one that was supposed to be competitive bid and you failed to do it, then you're in trouble. So it's better to just cap it at that lower threshold and be safe.
One other key thing to point out here too, and related to the council, because I know these comes up and we have it as the next action item. In reference to our auditor, we asked him about this. And if there's when a contract or for professional services for RDG, for example, for Susan is approved, typically Susan's abstaining from that and the payment. What the auditor told us is that doesn't need to happen for the pay requests. As long as the abstention happened related to the actual agreement being approved and then it's authorized, those pay requests now would go on the bill list. And it is perfectly fine for an elected official to sign that said bill list. This is even applies to Metro Waste as well. So we got that clarification from our auditor. That's something that also cleans up a little bit too. For example, following approval of this policy tonight, you no longer will see what you see as the next action item. That'll just be on the bill list and we won't have to separate them out. Again, it's just the agreement itself, the professional services agreement approval or contract with our relationship with Metro Waste Authority, where the abstention would have to occur if there's a conflict, but not for the payments because that's already been authorized by council. And now as an elected official, you're just proceeding on your normal actions as your fiduciary responsibility as an elected official. So it's different after that point. We got that in writing clarification from the auditor and have it documented.
From an accountant, does legal counsel agree?
I would have to look into it, but I think that makes sense that you're separating the approval of it from the payment of something already approved.
No disrespect to an accountant, but
Yeah.
that's not who I'm gonna be in court with.
Yeah.
Be a lawyer.
And the auditor, of course, is referring back to the state law guidelines, but yes, he isn't the state auditor, or our auditor isn't an attorney, correct?
So do we know, are these similar to other communities around us, their thresholds, or are we just kind of on the bleeding edge of this?
We are actually very similar to the surrounding communities. And what I found actually to be very humorous is all of the communities that I polled around us had the exact same policy, but butchered up in different ways. So Waukee butchered up the exact same policy that we were using to fit their needs. Urbandale had the exact same
The old
policy.
policy.
Hmm?
The
The
old
old one, yes. So we were all kind of working off of the same one. I don't know where it originated from, but we've all made it evolve into something that was kind of working for our own cities. But we were really at a point where we needed to just do a complete deep dive and a rewrite to address a lot of the realities of what we're seeing today. For instance, we never really addressed what happens if you buy a dump truck, but you can't get it for 2 years, or a fire engine that you can't get for 5 years. So we tried to address those kinds of things that come up that previous policy really was silent on and gave us no direction on how we proceed with those things. So in my opinion, we've addressed probably 90% of the issues that we set out to address. There's still some remaining things that you might see down the road. For instance, another chapter added for purchasing property. I intentionally did not address that at this time because it was beyond the scope of just, we needed to get this cleaned up right now. And we're not purchasing property that often except for Doug here. So, and he's good.
And the federal rules that go along with that, that's part of the complication with some of that, with the buyout area, flood prone property buyout area.
When you said the old rule was 10 grand, you should have seen Doug's face. He was like, who knew?
Well, actually, our old policy, it had a threshold of 0 to 5,000 with no direction at all. It was at 5,000, you were supposed to get approval. So in reality, you could spend up to $5,000 without getting anybody's approval, which we remedied that. So
Right.
And again, all those thresholds are
Right.
budgeted items. so
Correct.
It's already been approved in a budget.
Mhm.
That's a key point.
Other questions for Matthew? Otherwise, what we're looking for is.
Kind of just brought up a good point. Have we looked back and seen if there's a whole bunch of 49, 90,
There's not.
a whole bunch of them?
$4,999.
And of course, on the other end of the spectrum, how many things have we bought for 0 cents? That's what I wonder.
Not many.
Hard to imagine. Move to resolution.
Second.
Motion and second on the resolution. Further discussion. Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will clerk, please post that vote. And when do we get the new voting system?
I think it's operator, not the voting system.
And that passes 5-0.
As
Just-
Paula was staring at me.
I need a motion.
Oh, move approval.
Motion and second to approve the pay request. Further discussion. Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes with a vote of 4 yeses and 1 abstention. I think.
For the last time.
Yes.
Good, good. All right, we'll start with reports. Pete.
Thank you, Your Honor. Looking forward to the DC trip in May with the partnership. Sounds like there are about 200 people who are signed up for that, maybe even a few seats still left. So we'll see how big the final group ends up being. 5 delegations this time, me, Councilman Klein, Councilwoman Judkins will be making the trip, and we're working diligently to get scheduled with all of our representatives. We'll be meeting with staff from Senator Grassley's office, and I'm still working on logistics with Senator Ernst, and we'll see where Representative Nunn, how he decides to handle it. All of them got a lot of people asking for time, so kudos to their staff for the hard work of keeping all the cats wrangled when half the city of Des Moines shows up out there. Tree sale, we are into it. If you've not seen it on social media or on the webpage yet, had a great initial response. It's not a huge number of trees, about 50 trees, but we're over halfway there to getting those sold. The one tree species of the 5 that we're selling that has not seen as much action has been the river birch. So if you have any neighbors who like a river birch, and a tree they can have multiple
I would
stems or a
recommend
single
against
stem.
it. They shed like crazy.
That is also one of the drawbacks of the river.
Yes.
But there are a lot of other popular trees, some smaller trees, some larger trees. It's been a really nice initial response. I want to
And why do you hate trees?
I hate river birch because I had it in my backyard and I did nothing but pick up sticks all year long.
So I want to give credit to my colleague Julia McGuire in the Public Works Department. She has not only run the SQR program really for the last year very, very well, but now she's taken this and built it up to something that's very actionable. So we're excited to get to mid-May and fill out our dance card and then be ready to have those trees picked up and make sure they get planted successfully across the city. You may hear from some constituents about postcards they're receiving that are bright yellow that are about the survey. This we do every 2 years, the resident survey. This is just the postcard that tells them that they can now go online if they've been randomly selected to complete the survey there or wait until their paper survey arrives. Their window where they will exclusively be able to complete the survey is from now until mid-May, but starting May 17th, it will be open from May 17th roughly to the end of the month for anybody who's interested to complete the survey online. Our survey partners, POCO, know how to sort of handle the responses so that they don't mix things up in a way that screws up our statistical random sampling so that we get good results. And we hope that everybody will choose to participate. Not only is that valuable for us getting good, accurate information this year, but when people complete the survey online, they are kind of join our roster of folks we can go back to in the future to ask other questions when we're not doing these big once every 2 year surveys. Last, I'm sure that there'll be other updates on Central Iowa Waterworks, but I want to compliment the staff from Des Moines Waterworks and from West Des Moines Waterworks. They very proactively reached out to us here at the city of Clive. And I know they have with some other communities too, to say, how can we best work together to do in the early stages here to do some good storytelling? So those staff people did a really nice job, and we've got a good version of the press release that was shared yesterday at the press conference, and we'll make sure we get that shared out through Clive's channels, so residents know what this will mean for them and the water that they consume in the future. That's everything I have, Your Honor.
Thanks, Pete. Srikant.
I'll try to keep this to under an hour. So to talk about DART, DART had its public hearing for the budget. And as I think most of you have heard, and I think Matt had it in the last week's update or this week's update, I don't remember which one.
It's been in every update, I think, for the last like.
Okay,
2 or 3
yeah.
For years.
So MPO provided one-time funds to DART to make their budget whole.
You're welcome.
So yeah,
I don't know.
thank you to.
Thank you or not.
No, I mean, as far as keeping the riders whole for as long as possible, keeping those service routes, I mean, that's what makes sense, right? And then, the idea is to now be able to kind of keep the service where it's at while we do the survey, right? Which I still am not sold on the survey, but at this point, it's kind of, it's already got its own legs and it's kind of, cat's out of the bag. I continue to advocate for structuring it properly. So we're talking about governance and finance up front rather than doing all this work and then saying, oh, we don't have the money for it. Too bad. The other thing that has come up, and some of you may have heard Russ talk about how Reimagine DART is going to be anything and everything, every stone left or no stone left unturned. Found out during the meeting that Des Moines is already looking at doing its own survey or own study. They have a company that they have some that do some on-demand transportation services for them. So, you can kind of guess where they're going to skew towards. But it gives me concern because they're talking about this reimagined DART, but we've already got you got the biggest city saying, oh, we're going to do our own. Now, Connie did mention during the DART meeting that it's really just more, they're seeing as more informational so they can educate their council members. But I find that hard to believe because isn't that the point of Reimagine DART on some level?
Ankeny did this.
Yeah, and that was
Smaller
actually,
scale.
that was
Ankeny-
brought up,
That
right?
was very different though than
Well,
what,
preempting for a purpose. and
Yeah,
They
I
used
mean,
it
it's very
as a
different with
tool, which I think
Ankeny
Des
is-
Moines is gonna use as a
Yeah.
tool.
Right.
Same as Ankeny used it as a tool to get their on-demand and
Yep.
their other stuff they got out of.
So, and that's essentially, I think, what they're looking to do. Ankeny was cited a couple times as having done the same thing during the meeting.
Ankeny has very different goals than what City of Des Moines' goals are for those studies, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, and I did make the point of, if this is supposed to be the study that ends all studies, we've already failed because you've got a parallel study going on. Which there was some contention about Des Moines having money to spend on a survey, but not having money to put into the budget. So that was also brought up. I think it was actually quoted in the Des Moines Register article that came out after the meeting. So yeah, there's still some things to work out over there.
It's that same argument, right? You can use, and I agree with you, Ankeny did it for a different reason. Same out, but 3.5 million from MPO.
3.6.
3.6, sorry, 3.621 from MPO. And how much is your study?
So
One?
they're
One
estimating around 1 million, but they're saying that half of it will be from grants and then the other half will be match. I've still advocated for, we shouldn't be, I mean, you're talking about even with these funds, you're back to, I believe, a $3 million deficit in year 3.
And putting off the inevitable again by saying, let us study, and MPO just plugged the hole enough for us to
Well, and
limp along to.
yeah, and to piggyback on all that, I asked the question to Amanda at the meeting. Were there limitations, restrictions around the 3.6? How was that being used? And because it's part of the carbon reduction program, which is where the funds are coming from, which is dubious to begin with, in my opinion. But basically, they're taking those funds and putting them specifically towards buses.
Yep.
And then those
buses.
funds are they're fungible, so they can reallocate those funds to operations,
Yeah.
which extends the operations lifetime for 2 years, according to Amanda, but they're going to be right back there. So they got to start having these same hard conversations, as you know, next year.
Well,
Yeah,
right now.
right now, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But
So the
they're
carbon
going to be,
credits are buying diesel buses?
Well, so we are, so the bus fleet at DART is already kind of over its useful lifespan. So there
Along with
was
the electric.
the electric, yeah, that's a whole nother debacle. But
it's very dubious in my opinion, but
yeah, Ted's right. So basically the funds that are coming from MPO are going to be used to purchase the new buses that DART needs to keep its fleet, going. And they also have better miles per gallon, or, it's updated technology essentially. But the federal funds that were allocated for those purchases, as Ted said, have some flexibility in them so they can be moved to the operations budget. And that's what's going to shore up the deficit.
but it's a
Sounds like
one-time
just kind of a
infusion.
shell game.
It is. It's a one-time infusion.
Yeah.
And so
But
it
everybody did recognize that, and
Yeah.
everybody advocated for, this doesn't mean we wait 2 years or even a year.
Right.
We
Buying
gotta,
you some time,
Right.
but in the
or
inevitable
you
is
gotta
coming.
use the time.
Yeah.
Right.
right.
That's it for tonight.
Thank you. Ted?
Well, MPO, so we definitely had that vote on that. In addition, there were a number of other projects allocated from the STBG fund, which is the Surface Transportation Block Grant. So one was to us for 500,000 for the Northeast Alice's Road, Phase 3. So we asked for 1 million, we got 500,000. And then some kind of tangential projects. The 128th Street preservation, it's actually going to Urbandale, but obviously affects us. They received $1 million for that. The Hickman Trail construction, right? So what we had talked about previously, I believe, that kind of connects
East of the interchange.
yeah, east
on
of the
north side
interchange,
Hickman.
exactly. So they received 400,000 for that from the MPO. And then we also received 2.5 million for the interchange as part of that. And then Waukee received 1.35 for the Alice's Road replacement. So again, not directly to us, but impacts us as a result. So a lot of funding going out from the MPO.
Well done by our
right.
MPO rep. We must have got a new one there.
It was all because of me.
Did we get a new rep or something, or?
Is that the total over the last few years? That's not new money for.
Yeah, that may be. I mean,
I
that's,
think that's the total. over the
yeah, I
last-
think that's right.
2.5 would be the total over the last 3 years.
It's federal fiscal year 2023,
That's great.
STPG funding, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
So
good.
in any event, so yeah, number of projects that impacted us. So that's it.
Thanks, Ted. Eric?
Yes, attended the Dallas County Emergency Management Commission meeting where we talked about a federal grant that's going to be given a new generator. They're giving out federal equipment. Also, some space needs as well. In addition, Catch Des Moines Board met. We have a video to play, but also we bid on the Catch Des Moines has bid on the NCAA's, again, both men's and women's.
Nice.
I think it's 27 and 28. So again,
Excellent.
coming right down the barrel. Now, that's probably Chris Conley's biggest nightmare to host both at Wells Fargo, both the men's and the women's, but there's an opportunity out there. So we'll see what happens, but that would be a real huge lift to.
Those tend to be on different days, so.
It would be, but it's boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, it'd be
It's
all-
just a lot.
yeah, it would be a lot.
Which, I'm all for it. Let's
Boom.
go big or go home, right? If we have that opportunity, let's do it. So, but there's a lot of other things too, the traditional types of groups coming in, but those are some of the big ones coming up. And then here's that latest video. Hit it, Pete. Roll it.
Right.
So really a lot of stuff going on.
Let me
especially
show-
for marketing. One of the cool things that you'll see too, we got a lot of playoff in recent years has been, we'll provide something to the Chicago Cubs. And these guys talked about like steak de Burgo forever. They talked about the butter cow forever.
Hmm.
So it's really a cool marketing, very unique marketing. And then the other thing is, what was it? Something else. I don't know. A lot of stuff going on. Good stuff.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Susan?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Michael?
Have nothing.
Legal counsel?
No report, Your Honor.
Yeah. Nope, take it away.
You're gonna do yours you're gonna do it last?
Go ahead.
No, well, you're the board member.
I am, but so we had our first meeting of Central Iowa Waterworks.
your
I
picture.
think some of you probably saw the media coverage for that, which is very good. Matt did an excellent job of reporting on his tasks, and I think people were impressed with that. And Pete's name kept coming up over and over again, so.
Oh, God.
Good or bad?
It's a fair question, Council. A fair question.
It was very positive. I mean, they mentioned Clive's role, particularly as far as what Pete had done, and they were very impressed and wanted to be able to continue doing that with other communities moving forward. So they very much appreciated your efforts, but
Yeah, they spent a lot of time on the comms plan with them, so.
so very productive, good meeting, and we've got our marching orders, and I think everybody's really pleased at where we are now after a decade of work.
And you'll see a press release tomorrow morning. It'll be going out for the interim executive director selection of William Smith, Bill Smith, if you're familiar with him. Bill's been around a long time. But he's worked in the utility space for a regional association, so has a lot of experience and will be a 6 to 9 month appointment as the CIWW works on formal RFP and hire a recruiter for a recruitment process for the permanent executive director position, hoping by the end of the calendar year. I was appointed to a subcommittee to help with that effort, and the board made those actions during the meeting yesterday.
Board was most appreciative.
Yeah. And we were done in an hour and had a lot of actions in an hour. Of course, you have Mayor Edwards there to do the motions very quickly. That was-
Keeping things moving.
Keeping things moving, of course.
Chair Jody Smith very much appreciated that. Who will be the chair of CIWW, and David Jones is the vice chair. And then Diane Mums from Des Moines Waterworks is the board secretary, and then Mayor Clark and John McCune from Urbandale Waterworks. That group will make up the executive committee for CIWW for these first term, and your term was 2025.
Five.
They had to draw names for the staggering of all the terms, which was kind of a fun thing to do out of a fishbowl. Who was 2024, who was 2025, and who was 2026, so 3-year terms.
We'll continue with that. segue.
With that, Your Honor, just a couple other updates, just more of a situational awareness. We've got some severe weather coming in this weekend. I'll be sharing the latest information that I get, but we're monitoring that with some pretty nasty stuff tomorrow, and then looks like multiple rounds maybe over the weekend. So we're definitely into spring, and you'll feel that this weekend. We're worried about the wind than anything, but of course, heavy rains too, if things can, train over the basin. So
Matt, on that same thought, the Clive Trash Bash has been pushed back a
Yes.
week in
Because of
accordance
the-
with that inclement weather too.
yeah,
So
we have some
FYI.
severe weather, so that will move back a week. So if you volunteered for that, you should have seen a note from Jeff Lucas Still an opportunity to do so, same time a week from tomorrow, just due to the severe weather. Looks like some nice weather on the backside of it though, next week in terms of back into the 70s. So hopefully next week, Friday will be better. Couple neighborhood meetings coming up, the University Boulevard flood mitigation update meeting for that neighborhood on May 1st, next Wednesday at 5:30 at the Harbach Center in the community room. That's the one where we send the letter out to that flood prone property buyout area and then give them an update on the work that has been going on. And of course, Doug will have a lot to share with that group on things that are going on, and the technical assistance grant that we received that will take that planning work, technical work to another level in that neighborhood. The mayor and I and Jeff May will also be having a virtual meeting with the Country Club Owners Association Board, and then we've also invited the West Country Club West Woods Board just to give them an update on all the pavement management work that with the additions that the council has made to the CIP. And a lot of activity that's going to be happening in those neighborhoods here starting in a few weeks, but also laying out the 5-year plan of all the additions that we've made, that you all made in that adoption of that CIP with increased funding. So the board had engaged us quite a bit last year, and Mayor, myself, and Jeff were involved in a number of meetings. And so we wanted to circle back with that group, talk a little bit about communications, how that is shared with the neighborhood. They have their own newsletters that they can also distribute. We're going to be creating some pages on the city's website, especially for that asphalt overlay portion of just a lot of FAQs of what's it going to look like and how we're going to manage particularly those transitions. We know there'll be questions on those, so we want to get out ahead of that from a communication standpoint. So that'll also be happening here in a couple of weeks. I think that's May 9th. Just a reminder, Monday, we'll have the 5 o'clock special meeting for the FY 24-25 budget adoption at 5. Again, virtual option is available. Hopefully that'll be brief. The new legislation that has passed would have not needed to do it in a special meeting. So apparently there was a number of other cities who had that same struggle with the budget publication, where the property tax corrections bill that was passed before the legislature adjourned actually addressed that. There were some other things that was addressed in that legislation. The property tax tiers. So as I know we've talked about in the budget process, that the new legislation created tiers where essentially the taxable valuation of a city would take a kind of a haircut, if you will, if you're above a certain level. But those tiers have changed with this property tax corrections bill. So before it was, if you were below 3%, you had kind of full control over your general fund levy. If you were 3 to 6% valuation growth, you took a 2% haircut off of that growth. And if you were above 6%, like we were for this fiscal year, you took a 3% reduction in the form of the levy being forced down in the general fund. The new tier structure now is 2.75% and below, you have full control. 2.75 to 4% is a 1% haircut, 4% to 6% 2, and then 6 and above is still 3. Other little minor modifications, the requirement of when the mailing, the infamous property tax mailing goes out is now moved up by a week and a half. So that'll actually be mailed out in early March. So therefore the council will have to you all have to make a decision on the information that is included in that letter by the end of February. We were ahead of the game this year by the end of February, so it doesn't really change our timeline all that much, but it does give more room for budget publication in between, which is nice. And some other corrections, but that the tier structure change is probably the most impactful, relatively minor, but most impactful. And I think it did make some sense to go to a 1% and not have that big jump from 3, 2 to 0. So we'll see how that plays out.
I can just see the
future budget.
infographic now with the different styles of haircut, right?
Yeah,
Low fade,
right.
mid fade, the high and tight.
Yep.
Some memes going for
It is
that.
definitely a change. The last thing that I have for your honor is this afternoon, the staff team along with the recruiter met, and we've narrowed the list down to 4 finalist candidates for the police chief position. For those that are involved in the interviews, we've held the afternoon of May 20th. Go a little bit into the early evening to do all 4 interviews in a row. Assuming those 4 candidates, we can lock in by that period. And then we'll go through the process from there. But we are down to a list of 4 out of, we started about 27, 25 candidates. So very, very happy with the list we have. We have 4 very strong candidates. And there'll be more information coming out about that in the next few weeks.
It'll be the afternoon of the 20th, not the.
It'll
whole
start at
day?
11.
Okay.
Kind of like what we did last time with the fire chief process, where we started off with lunch with all the panel
Right.
members combined, gave instruction, everybody dispersed to we'll have 3 panels for this one, which is what we had last time for the fire chief process. Panels we'll have the interview process, and then we'll come together at the end, roughly 5-ish o'clock, to then have all the panels report back and then release them like we did last time. One panel reports, leaves, and then it
Right.
ends with the personnel committee members and myself at the end with the recruiter. So 11 to 6, I just sent you a meeting invite for the personnel committee members. So that'll be Ted, Susan, and John. That'll be a part of the interview process. We'll also have Chief Johansson from Urbandale, who'll be with us as kind of our outside police chief. We'll have some Civil Service Commission members involved, along with one of our police sergeants and our police union president, with the recruiter and Roxanne in a panel, and then our department heads in another panel. So we're starting to kind of outline the details, but I wanted to at least get the calendar hold out to you all, and excited about moving that forward. That's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's any questions.
Any questions? Anything else for the good of the order? If not, we will adjourn at 6:56.